What's going on, everybody? I'm going to be breaking down how I kind of apply SMT into my trading, what exactly it is, kind of give you guys two examples here. And we'll also talk about SMT on different assets than what we're typically normally trading. I mainly focus on NQ and ES, right? But as we know, there are three correlating assets. So what do we have? We have one being NQ, we have two being ES, and we have three being YM. Now, I will note this. SMT to me, the most important SMT, will be between NQ and ES. That doesn't mean that YM is irrelevant and I don't watch it. It just means the higher probability SMT is going to be between NQ and ES. The reason being is because those are stronger in terms of correlation, right? There's a lot of times where YM could be doing its own thing, but it is important to note when YM sweeps certain levels. Now, in this example, we'll break down exactly, between NQ and ES because that's the one that we favor more, but it is important to note about YM, right, at all times because it does have areas of liquidity that we sweep, right, and we get displacement out of that range. And that's important to note that SMT, right, is likely to hold. Now, what is exactly SMT in terms of, let's make a little model here, right? SMT is where we sweep the high on one asset, right, and we don't on the other. Let's break this down. Why can I not draw? There we go, right? This is our SMT here, meaning we swept the high on NQ, right? And then ES, we do not, right? In this example here, this is what SMT is. So we would label this SMT. Now, let's say that ES also took the high, right? And we start to get displacement. A lot of times, if you go check YM, you will notice that SMT is put in place, right? And YM does not, let's just pretend this YM does not take the high, right? And that'll be our SMT. The most important thing to note about SMT that a lot of people get wrong is they think, okay, we took a high and we have some kind of SMT. Well, you have to ask yourself two things. Where's the draw on liquidity and where's the narrative, right? You have to align these things with that SMT, right? Especially when putting a low or high of day SMT to look for some kind of reversal. Something else is I'm always looking for displacement out of that price range. We always talk about liquidity being swept and seeing a reaction under there. This is no different, right? Doesn't matter if it's internal, right? Fair value gap SMT or just a daily low, daily high being swept, right? Need to see displacement, right, in the price legs that we're looking for in order to engage with price, right? I don't want to see a high get taken, right? Let's say for this example, a little bit zoomed in, right? And kind of do this, right? I don't want to see that, right? I don't care if it's kind of grinding up, right? That's showing me that although we swept this high, maybe we're tapping into some kind of PD array, right? There's no reaction from these highs just yet, right? Now, let's say it wants to grind higher, right? And then we start to get displacement. Then we look to engage, with this price leg here, right? Or even lower continuation, whatever that might be, right? I need to see some kind of reaction in order for me to validate that SMT. That is the most important thing that a lot of people get wrong. Doesn't matter what time frame you're looking at, right? So for this example here, I was drawing this out before. Let's go ahead and pop open NQ and ES. We'll go over two examples here in this price range. So what is price looking like on the higher time frame? As you can see, we're trending down, right? We have displacement down, we come back up, retrace, right? We sweep this high, whatever this is, right? And get displacement down, retrace, right? Structure is overall pretty bearish. Now, also keep in mind with the type of price action we've been in a big higher time frame range. That's also something to note, right? What is price doing after we swept this high? We get an immediate reaction down into this price range. We also have this 15-minute gap being respected, which is important to note, right? If we violate that gap, we should be able to see much, much lower. Now, ES already violated this gap, right? ES being the weaker asset in this example. Also, we could see that ES taps back in his 15-minute gap and is getting a reaction out of here, right? If we play this forward, right? We can anticipate price to most likely run, especially on ES, run these lows, right? And for sure, run 761 on NQ, right? Obviously, ES is a lot weaker in this scenario. That's why we're most likely targeting these lows in terms of our bearish bias, right? Going into this morning or the open even, right? We could see the 761, right? You could see us run these lows on, this is the 9:30 open, right? You could see us run these lows on ES, right? And what do we immediately have right off this open? We can see here we failed to take these lows, right? Although these lows are still, relative equal lows, seeing this reaction is showing me that price is likely to trade higher. Now, again, if we're looking for bullish scenario, right, let's say our draw on liquidity now is higher, right, we obviously would want to favor being long on NQ rather than ES, right? Seeing that, we have a bullish bias put in, right? We have bullish SMT with these lows, right? Meaning we did not take this low on NQ, but we did on ES, right? And we're seeing a reaction from that price range. Going back into the 5-minute, what do we put in? Right, a 5-minute gap, right? And from here, we would want to see price trade higher. Now you can see here we put in a 5-minute gap, bearish gap, and we're looking for price to continue higher after we close above these highs. Right, price trades higher. That's exactly what we're looking for, right? We tap in this 15-minute gap and we end up sweeping this high. Now, this is where, okay, we swept this high on NQ, right? We did not on ES yet. People might be like, oh, there's SMT, there's SMT. Well, here's the thing. We put in such a significant low. We have in this kind of 15-minute gap now that we created. In order for me to develop some kind of bearish bias off of this SMT, I would need to see this 15-minute gap, right, flip down, which let's see if we do, right? We continue to trend higher, right? We're kind of chopping, right? Notice how there's no reaction there initially, right? This is also going into the market close as well after we had an expansion move, right? And we're paying attention to how price is reacting, right? We still have this ES draw up here. We also have this ES high as well, right? 6,931. And then we have this high here, whatever this is at that 9:30 open, right? So showing that we had this, in quotations, SMT, right? That's where a lot of people go wrong, is we put in a bullish PD array. There's really no reason to look bearish if we're not getting any kind of reaction, right? And as you could see, right, structure is still holding, right? We're tapping back into this PD array. We swept this internal low, also creating what? Right, SMT. We can see with these lows here, right? This was not taken, right? And structure is still holding out of this 15-minute gap, right? And what can we anticipate next? Right, there you go, into those highs, right? And again, this really, really helps understanding the price reactions out of those price legs. That's what I see a lot of people get wrong, is they're marking out highs or lows that are being taken, right? Even if they're within narrative, right? You have to know how to flip, right? In terms of your narrative or bias, right? And this is just one of those things here with that example that I was talking about, is how we're still kind of grinding higher, consolidating. There's no reaction. So there's no reason to look for that bearish SMT to deliver lower until it tells you to look at that, right? And that pretty much covers a majority of the points that I always talk about. One being, right, SMT displacement, right? And 2 for PD arrays to get violated. Make it 3. And then obviously following narrative / draw on liquidity, right? Those 2 things. 3 things, sorry. And those are really the 3 main components that I look for. I keep it very simple and it's very effective. And I hope you guys learned something from this video. Leave a like, sub, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.